Hey everybody, this is Erica, the technology nerd likes to film stuff, and today I wanted to try out a new little mini series and see if you guys like it, and if you do, I will continue doing it in future videos. So I want to start a mini series that is called Feature Favorite, and basically it would give me a chance in between reviews to talk about the phone that I'm reviewing and what features that phone has that would make me want to buy it. And then on the flip side, I'd also want to talk about the features that would turn me off from buying it as well. So the first device that I want to start with is the Xperia XZ Premium because it's kind of the underdog of the flagship smartphones that have been released. And I think that there are a lot of great features. So I'll tell you what those features are that I really like, the ones that I don't. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so let's start off talking about my favorite features from least to most important to me in terms of what would make me buy this device. So number one, we've got the look, the feel, and the design of the phone. Now, of course, liking the way that your phone looks is really important because you're going to be staring at it for quite some time. And to me personally, this is a really beautiful phone. Just like a lot of other flagships out there, we've got glass on the front and also on the back, which also makes it a nice fingerprint magnet. And one of the things that really stands out to me is how good is the oleophobic coating on a device. It better be really good if you have glass on the front and on the back. And thankfully, I'm happy to report that this is probably one of the best oil-resistant coatings that I've seen on a device. It's almost enough just to slip it in and out of your pocket, and it will be pretty much clean when you take it out. Also, that oleophobic coating lends to a really nice, smooth, frictionless feeling surface, so your fingers just glide across the screen. So Sony did a good job with that. Also, I love the color. I was first thinking that the mirror finished version would be nicer, but actually, I am a huge fan of this black one. It's not as reflective, as you can see. Hello! This is the Xperia Z5 Premium. So this black color looks really classy, really stunning. And then there is the design. I know a lot of people find that Sony has made a really tired looking design, very similar to all the other Sony devices out there. But I actually like it. And I like it because it is practical for me. You've got a large bezel at the top and also at the bottom, so it's practical for me to hold on to. If I'm taking pictures, it makes sense. If I'm trying to watch YouTube videos, it makes sense. I'm not smudging up my screen. If I'm playing games, it also makes sense. So I'm actually a fan of bezels. A lot of people aren't. Yes, I think the Galaxy S8 Plus is absolutely beautiful, but I do have a hard time figuring out where to put my thumbs. So I am just fine with those crazy bezels. This phone does also have a nice hefty feel to it. It feels premium. My one gripe would be that I thought these were metal here on the sides. This isn't metal, it's actually plastic, but we do have a nice brushed aluminum type metal here at the top and at the bottom, and I really like the way that the chamfers look on here. So to me, this looks classy, this feels classy. I also like these curves because it feels really nice in the hand. Number two, performance. That's extremely important. One component of performance is just simply how does the phone feel? How smooth is it? Now, I love Samsung phones, but oftentimes I find that they are quite stuttery. A lot of the time you'll have just perfectly great performance and then just suddenly it just starts stuttering for whatever reason. And that was very noticeable to me when I picked up this device because it's very, very smooth. Going through the menus, it's very smooth. Going through the entire interface, it just feels very smooth and very responsive, so it's a pleasure and a joy to use. We can take a look at how it's doing in terms of dropping frames by looking at GPU rendering on screen as bars, and you can see that there are no frame drops for the most part. When you're scrolling through, it looks pretty darn nice and smooth. And when there are frame drops, they're not really intense or extremely noticeable. So I think that they did a pretty good job on this, keeping it nice and smooth. One thing that people complain about is the dated look of the launcher. Sony just likes to keep things old school, but you can put a different launcher on it, and even their own launcher that's on here is pretty customizable. They've got their old Sony icons, which I don't really like, so I just changed it up a bit. So here I just changed the background with my little chalkboard bear. I put some pixel theme icons in here. I moved a little apps tray from here over to here. You see, I like having things laid out more like a desktop. So to me now, this looks definitely more modern. Of course, you also have the option to mess around with themes. You can buy themes, you can get some free ones from the store. I just used the standard themes. But the one that's currently applied is called Copper. And that one's really nice too. If I don't have that little bear in the background, I like to use just this nice copper look. Lastly, for performance, what really sticks out about this device is that it is a flagship through and through. This has the Snapdragon 835 SoC on it, and it is a graphics performing champ. The display is 4K, but everything is being rendered in 1080p, except for some apps like video apps. So needless to say, it does pretty darn well with the Snapdragon 835 at only being 1080p when playing games. So I can keep a solid 60 frames per second on a pretty graphic-intensive game. This is Riptide GP2. I set the settings up all the way, and check that out. So not only is this a nice, smooth-performing phone around the interface, it's also a good graphics performer. So if you like gaming on your phone, this thing is up to the task. Number 3, and climbing in importance, is software experience. What kind of special software features stand out in a phone that makes it usable? Each phone has its own little type of ecosystem. And I'm just going to pick my top favorite one. And it is called LifeLog. This is probably something that a lot of people don't use or don't give much thought into. Probably the best mainstream thing I can compare it to is Samsung Health. So opening it up, this offers its own little unique experience. It lets me know how I'm using my phone through the day and what I'm doing through the day. Let's just start off up here. You can see all these little widgets down here at the bottom that offer information. And it maps them here depending on what time of day you're doing all these things. Like, for example, sleep. This lets me know that I am a terrible sleeper. Basically, what it does is it tracks when you stopped using your phone at night. It goes for several hours knowing you haven't played with it. Then when you pick it up in the morning, it automatically logs that as sleep. So I can see how much I'm sleeping, where sleep is broken when I pick up my phone to take a look at it, and also when I go back to sleep again. So that's pretty impressive. I can see I was pretty restless last night, and it's constantly tracking this for me over the days. We also have the pedometer that's constantly tracking my steps, so it just lets me know on a trend how active I am. That's extremely important when you have a desk job and all you do is really just sit around and edit video. It'll track various things like running, cycling. It even tracks how long that you're in the car for. It can tell when it's starting to go really fast, and it logs that as car time. So back and forth to work, it'll tell you how much time you're spending in the car. And of course, it tells you your calorie burn as well. And it's really neat that it tells you the passive calorie burn. So just how many calories you burn on a day-to-day basis, just breathing, thinking, just living. And then also through walking around or through exercise. So it gives you a really good idea of your trends. So if you start gaining weight, take a look at your trends. It can give you an idea as to why. It tells me how long I'm on the internet for. It tells me how much communication I do, how much video I watch. So it logs it for YouTube. It tells me how much YouTube videos I watch every day, how much games I play. This might be invasive to some people, but I find it to be extremely useful. So thank you, Sony, for the LifeLog thing. This actually clues me in on a lot of habits that I have that need to change. Next, and continuing upwards in importance, is the camera. We've got a 19 megapixel camera here on the back. And I usually like this camera because I can take a lot of very detailed photos with that 19 megapixels. And I can take a lot of photos that have a really nice artsy feeling to them. When this camera takes nice photos, it takes nice photos. So I have a lot of fun going out and using it, especially in nature and taking pictures of flowers. And also for video, it's got great stabilization. From what I understand, it's software stabilization that they use. There is no optical image stabilization. But it does fantastic. And above all, I really love the 960 frames per second slow motion mode, so you can take little bursts of slow motion. And of course, in good lighting, that's going to look really, really nice. I'm hoping to use this phone for future drop tests, as I don't have other cameras that have that slow of slow motion. So it's certainly a fun camera to use. It's enough to keep me interested and enough to keep me entertained. Finally, the most important thing to me is number 5, and that is the display. If I don't like a display on a phone, I'm just simply not going to want to use it. So it really is that important. It's the first thing that you see that's on the front of the device. That's what you spend your time interacting with, and this does not disappoint. This is a 4K IPS display. Now, granted, apps and everything are mostly rendered at 1080p, but the advantage of having that 4K screen is that even when everything is at 1080p, it's perfectly sharp. You don't have any jagged edges, text looks perfectly sharp, it looks like printed paper. So it's a much better experience for me than looking at a 1080p display side by side with this 4K display rendering everything at 1080p, if that makes sense. It's also a really nice and bright display. It's brighter than last year's. It's got better contrast than last year's. And it's actually a 4K HDR display. So once we get the update to the Amazon Prime Video app, we should be getting 4K HDR. I don't know when that's going to be, but I know that it's going to look absolutely astounding. You can already view 4K on YouTube videos, so the YouTube app definitely supports 4K. And seeing is believing on this phone. People say with this phone, oh, it's such a small display, you're really not going to notice that pixel density. But yes, you do. The difference is like knowing that you're looking at a display versus feeling like you're looking into a little window into reality. It is really just that sharp, and with the right content, there is no comparison. It's hard for me to go back, really. Another practical use is when I'm taking pictures. We've got a 19 megapixel camera sensor. So when I go to view those pictures on this screen, I'm getting to see the full resolution of those images, and it just looks amazingly sharp. It's just a pleasure to go and view my images under the gallery because I can see all the detail in that picture. So absolutely phenomenal display. I don't see how anybody could be upset with it. I have found it to be a bit of a battery hog, yes, but it is just so worth it. So it's also nice that we do have some settings under display. Some of you guys also know that I'm really a stickler for good calibration. So we have an sRGB color gamut. You've got a standard mode and a super vivid mode. Basically, this is a very wide gamut display. It's capable of displaying a very wide range of colors. But the content that we have out there is meant for a smaller range of colors. So when you view it on a wider range of colors, it oversaturates them. So it's nice to be able to bring that all back down again to something that's going to look more accurate with the sRGB mode. So everything from Android to web content to even YouTube content, all that is in sRGB. If you want it to look decent and not oversaturated, use sRGB. Now I did some measurements and I saw that the actual color space coordinates are pretty close matching to sRGB, not perfect. But the white point is definitely off. So you can go underneath white balance and you can mess around with the settings. Basically this display is just very bluish. And I actually was able to use a colorimeter and to measure the display so I could get the white point to D65 like it should be. So I don't know if this will be the same for every display because there could be variations, but these are the settings that I have on it to get it to the D65 white point. Only thing is that when you mess around with these sliders, it does make the display a little bit more dim so you don't get that full brightness. And I noticed that it messes with the color space a bit so it's not hitting that full sRGB color gamut. But still, if I need to have any type of accuracy, I would rather use this mode. And so what is nice for these other modes, if you want to have that super saturation, that's fine. That white point looks very cool. But you have the ability to change the white balance for each mode. So it's not just for one mode, cough Samsung. You can adjust the white points for all of the modes that they offer. So that makes me super happy. Sometimes I like having a nice vivid looking screen, but I don't want it to be too bluish. So I can go in and adjust it just by adding a little bit more red back, and I'm happy. So no complaints about the display at all. This has got to be probably my favorite display of the year. So now I'd like to take a second to thank my sponsors at Casper so much for making content creation possible. Casper is a sleep brand that created one perfect mattress sold directly to consumers, eliminating commission-driven, inflated prices. With over 20,000 reviews and an average of 4.8 stars, it's quickly becoming the internet's favorite mattress, so my curiosity was piqued. So if you guys follow me on Twitter, you've probably heard that I've got a pinched nerve in my back and also my neck that I'm going to physical therapy for, so I've been looking into getting a new bed that's got a lot more support. I've been curious about memory foam mattresses, so Jon and I have been really excited to try out this Casper. So it is a mattress that combines foam layers, including a supportive memory foam. For a sleep surface, I'm hearing has got just the right sink and just the right bounce and an ideal firmness. They also say its breathable design sleeps cool to help regulate your body temperature through the night, which is extremely important to me because I sleep like a furnace. If you're worried about not getting to try it first, they offer a 100-night trial with free, no-hassle returns if you're not happy. If you guys want to try one out too, go to casper.com/Erica and use the promo code Erica at checkout for $50 off your mattress. Go check them out. Hope you guys liked that Casper video. Jon and I had a lot of fun making it. Let's talk about those things that would make me not want to buy this phone. Now, obviously, I'm being subjective here. These are my experiences, but balance is good. Balance is a good thing. So first, we've got stereo speakers on here, which is ultimately a plus, but they're very quiet. In order to enjoy anything, I need to boost the sound pretty much all the way to max, and even then, it's not as loud as it should be.
I'm sure it's protecting the inner bag. Oh, it's a backpack.
So thank you, Sony, for the gesture, but make it louder. Another thing about this phone that would make me not want to buy it, or at least instead of getting the unlocked model like I have right here, which has the fingerprint sensor enabled, I'd probably go for the United States version that doesn't have that fingerprint sensor enabled, because if the fingerprint sensor isn't very good to begin with, I don't want to use it. What I find is that just like last year, it's a very picky sensor. If it's a little bit moist or just has a little bit of fingerprint grime on it, it doesn't recognize your fingerprints anymore. So I'm constantly having to make sure that the sensor is clean, that my fingers aren't moist. Some people just have moist hands. And so in those conditions, it'll keep telling me that it can't unlock. It can't unlock. But right now, you can see that it's pretty accurate as I've just cleaned the sensor. So you can see that it's working pretty well for now. But just make sure to keep that fingerprint sensor clean. I've played with lots of phones, and they all have fingerprint sensors, and they all seem to perform a little bit better than this and are more reliable. You should let me know your experiences. And lastly, the biggest thing that would make me not want to buy this is also something I praised earlier, the camera. So when this phone takes good pictures, it takes really nice pictures. But the problem is that Sony is very aggressive with their post-processing. And I find this to be true whether you're using this auto mode or the manual mode. The most annoying part is that they over-sharpen crazily. They over-sharpen to a point where there isn't really any detail in the image anymore. So if you're not going to be cropping your photos or really pixel peeping, you're probably not going to care. But where this affects me most is when I'm taking an image with a nice shallow depth of field. When you look at the blurred background, you see a lot of sharpening artifacts in that blurry background. You shouldn't be sharpening that blur. I also don't find the HDR images to be as stellar as other cameras. And probably something that's going to stand out to those who aren't as picky as I am is that there are some weird distortions in images. Here I'm taking a look at a keyboard, and it's bending the keyboard where there are no bends. I've seen it worse on other ones. Mine is not as bad. I'm hoping this is something that Sony can fix with software. A lot of these things are things that Sony can fix with software. But the question is, will they? So I don't know. You can tell me what you think. There are some other camera experiences that are overall more positive and even. So now that I've talked about my favorite features and also the features that I don't like that would kind of turn me off from buying this, overall, what is the conclusion? Would I buy this phone? That is the important question here. And yes, I would even say hell yes. This is a really nice phone. It makes me sad that it's really maligned and made fun of, because I think that Sony did a phenomenal job from the performance to the display to the features of this phone. I think the camera is overall excellent, but it does have some annoying issues, and I think that a lot of that can be fixed with software. I think that they can help improve the fingerprint sensor with software. So all the things that I did complain about are more or less software issues, but hardware-wise, fantastic. I don't think that anyone will be upset with this phone. You can buy it in the United States. You can also buy it abroad. So let me know what you guys think about this phone. Now that I've shown you all of these things that are good and bad, does that change your mind about the Xperia XE Premium? Would you go and buy this based on all these things I've shown you? So let me know. This has been Erica, the Technology Nerd, likes to film stuff. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what your favorite feature of this phone is that I've showed you. Hope you enjoyed the video, and goodbye.